What should a country be optimizing for? Like, is it health, money, happiness? I know you said that individual happiness isn't really ideal to optimize for, but on a country scale, does it make sense?
It's a very good question because, once again, to answer it professionally, I have to. I, those things you just named, if a country optimizes for the happiness of its constituents, it will not be the most competitive country. If a country optimizes for the competitiveness of its constituents, it will not be the happiest country. But then are these two countries in competition? Because if they are, or most are, you should probably optimize for competitiveness because otherwise you're going to have a very short-lived, happy country which is eventually destroyed. It's kind of what's happening now, right? You have China, which is a collectivist society, and then we have America and these other countries which are individualist. But collectivism is going to win in the long run because all the ants work for the good of the ant farm, and they're prepared to sacrifice for themselves for the good of the ant farm. So in the end, collectivism is going to win. Now, you can sit and say life in China is no good because it's controlled. Well, that's true, but if they win and we lose, well, then life in China is better than being a loser because your country's going to get wrecked. So it's very hard to say what a country should optimize for. And I guess that's the current and never-ending battle, right? Of a person who wants to live a good life and the government who wants what's good for the government. So what's good for the ant isn't always what's good for the ant farm. So you have to decide between these two things. And for that to work, I guess what happens is in Western countries, the people, the individuals need to have enough faith in their leaders and enough faith in their government to make a degree of personal sacrifice, which we no longer have, right? So maybe in the days of old, you could say, look, we're going to raise taxes because we're going to build the military. And most Americans would say, okay, I accept and understand that because I believe in my government. I believe in my military. I believe that my government does not waste money. I believe that the wars we get in are just and essential for our defense. I believe this is a good thing. We no longer have that in the West. Now, everybody hates the government because we know they're incompetent cowards and liars and they betray us. So we only want what's good for us. We don't want anything that's good for government. But then how can our government compete with other world governments if they don't have any true control of the population, if they can't do a draft or they can't control no one listens to them or no one wants to pay the taxes to them? It's all a mess. It's difficult. What China has, it has collectivism, but people believe in the leader. So they're like, this may be bad for me, but it's good for China, and I believe in the leader of China.
Would you ever optimize for health?
Well,
That's what you optimize for on a personal level. Like that's the first thing you tell people to do, get in shape.
Yeah, I mean, but then it all goes together, right? Because you optimize for health, which is good for the ant, but is that truly good for the ant farm? How can you mine? How can you get natural resources? How can you generate power? How can you do all these things if your primary concern is health of your people? Then you only care about clean air, X, Y, Z. Everything's in balance because if you only optimize for health,
You
you're
get
gonna
invaded.
lose.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. And unfortunately, the bottom line of all things, as we discussed earlier, is violence. So perhaps you need to optimize for the capability to be violent because perhaps that allows you to then get everything else, which is what the Americans do, by the way. America is the world's largest superpower because it has the world's largest army. So, I mean, they could mine for cobalt, or they could just overthrow a government and take their cobalt, which is what they effectively do with the American dollar and military groups and sponsoring terrorism and the army. So if you optimize for violence, you can probably fix most of your problems via violence. If you optimize for health, it's hard to fix any other problem.